Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rage and Love, where we passionately debate and discuss topics about religion, science, history, and also current events. So, again, just me today, and Lyric, of course, our guest. So, but Joy didn't join us today. All right. So, first, let me quickly introduce this topic that we have today. Today, we're going to talk about neurodivergence. And what happens when the world expects your brain to fit into a box that it was never meant for? When society labels your differences as deficits, your intensity as too much or too sensitive, and your silence as not enough, and then your identity is confusing to them. So today's guest knows exactly what that feels like. They were diagnosed autistic as an adult, living at the intersection of neurodivergency, gender diversity, ADHD, and non binary identity. So they've navigated the world that often wasn't built for people like them. So this conversation isn't about overcoming anything, it's more about uncovering things. It's about seeing these sort of invisible structures of a neurotypical world and questioning who does it serve? Who does it leave behind? So, we're going to explore a story of belonging, survival, and the radical act of living authentically in a world that demands conformity. So, welcome, Lyric of
Thank you.
Neurodivergent Rebel. Did I say that right, Lyric? Good.
Yes, that's
Okay.
perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that beautiful intro. I love it.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. I love doing like these little heartfelt introductions for my guests.
It's an exciting
So,
topic too. I'm ready to dive into it.
oh yeah, I love it. So, first of all, I know we were talking about this right before the show that sometimes when there's a live chat or when there's a very um, controversial topic, people might be a little bit negative. And everybody knows on my channel that pronouns are very important to me. And so I want to remind everybody that lyrics pronouns are they, them. So please respect that. Right.
Thank you.
So I'm very familiar with your content, okay, because I've been watching it for years since my kid was diagnosed. Okay, no, maybe not that far back, because I was like 8 years ago. But a couple years after they were diagnosed, I started watching their stuff because I was like interested in learning more about neurodivergence and autism, ADHD, and all that went with that. But for those watching that may not be familiar with your content, can you tell me more like what you do? Share anything like your books, your platform that you share content in, and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So my name is Lyric. People probably know me on the internet as the Neurodivergent Rebel. If you search Neurodivergent Rebel, it'll come up everywhere. I've got a website. I'm on Substack. My big community is on Facebook, but that's just where I got my start after Twitter turned into a cesspool. So, uh, the community has really just been an amazing thing that just popped up around this blog I started when I found out I was autistic at the age of 29, a few months before my 30th birthday. And I was trying to unpack what that really meant after finding out I'd basically been unintentionally living a lie that was forced down my throat, that we all have the same kind of brains and my brain is just like everyone else's, when in fact my brain was definitely measurably different in many ways. And so, I just had been basically gaslighting myself, and society helped me do that from my own needs, and been disconnected from my own sense of what my needs were. And honestly, even my own sense of self was just completely shattered by thinking I had to be some kind of version of me that matched neurotypical expectations and ideals, and being unable to actually meet that expectation, and thinking because I couldn't do it, that meant I was a failed human and basically didn't deserve to like exist. And then I found out I was autistic, and it was just like this validation, and just like getting the handbook for my life and my brain for the first time when I was already almost 30, and getting to know myself all over again. So, for the past, it'll be 9 years this fall, I've been on a journey sharing just kind of my life and experiences and thoughts as I've been unpacking that process. You know, and it kind of started, people thought it was going to be an autism and neurodiversity blog, which isn't never really what it was meant to be. It's just kind of, that's what I was obsessed with when I started the blog, because I just found out I was autistic. So I was like, naturally, autism, I'm obsessed. But really, it's a blog about my thoughts and my experiences. And so lately, it's been a lot more political because I live in the United States. I'm in Texas, so being a neurodivergent queer human being who is, you know, multiply marginalized in different ways and multiply neurodivergent, like that, and being that I worked in my day job as a consultant helping organizations be more inclusive for neurodivergent and queer people, you know, my day job has literally become so taboo that I have, you know, many of my clients are afraid to even do stuff now because of the regime. So they gave me the free time, and so I'm like, okay, you're gonna come at me, I'm coming at you. So I've kind of dedicated the blog to exposing the truth lately, because really, even though it was about neurodiversity and autism, if I really come down to it, like the core message of the blog is that social hierarchies are garbage. Doesn't matter what kind of social hierarchy it is, whether it's neuronormativity, heteronormativity, racism, you know, it's all garbage. We shouldn't be living in any kind of social hierarchy. There's not like one kind of person that's better than the other. And then the other thing is just this anti-forced assimilation, you know, and that, you know, whatever kind of forced assimilation that is, you know, it's like, you know, I have ancestors who were forced to assimilate into this country. As a neurodivergent person, forcing to assimilate almost broke me to the point where I didn't know I wanted to exist anymore, you know. And so I could have become another statistic, because autistic people, unfortunately, and neurodivergent people, because of just being othered and outcast and alone and isolated and feeling like we're not enough, like that's a common path. And so like I wanted there to be like, it doesn't have to be this way, there's another way, and it's we shouldn't have to be ashamed of who we are. And so that's really what the blog is about. It's like, you know, I want people to be able to be kind to one another and to give space to one another to be their full selves, so that we're not stuck in this state of like, which self is okay for this situation, constantly evaluating. Let people just exist and bring all of their self, like all of their self, like, and bring the full self and just exist and just be, instead of just being in that hypervigilant, am I enough state. And that's been my life for the last 9 years. And, you know, and I wrote a book about the business stuff, workplace neurodiversity rising, and all of that. And but you know, really it's just trying to make the world a bit kinder, and to realize like we need to stop assuming everyone's coming from the same place, whether that's like background or even the same experience of the world. You know, because neurodivergent people, we have different like ways we interpret the information coming in, whether that's words or sensory information or things like that. So it's like realize that, hey, like our world is really amazing because we all have different experiences. So we should be
diverse.
curious, you know, be curious,
Yeah.
really. It's let's be curious about one another.
Right. I feel like what attracted me to your blog and your content was like your authenticity. At the time, I was struggling with mine like really hard to like fitting in with everybody else around me. And one of the reasons I think why that happened was because growing up, I've been deaf my whole life, and so that I felt so deeply that part when you were talking about assimilation and made to feel that I had to be just like everybody else. So ableism, right? In
Yeah.
this case, and so I grew up. I did not go to a deaf school. I didn't learn sign language. I had to grow up being deaf, but in the hearing world, and it was so hard. It was so freaking
Wow.
hard. Yeah. So I was really lucky when I think it was 2017. I got my cochlear implant. That completely changed my life from where I was before. Like I went from having like 8% hearing to like 65 to 70%
Oh, that's a
hearing.
big difference.
No, yeah. So I would have never been able to do something like this, like a live show, if it wasn't for my implant. But it streams directly into my brain, so the sound is like surround sound sort of. So it's
Oh,
amazing.
interesting.
Yeah. So it's like I'm not hearing it from my ear. It's like I hear it all over my head. It's hard to
Wow.
explain.
No one's
But it's
ever
like,
explained that to me. That's really fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing. I love, see,
yeah.
ever since I learned I was neurodivergent, that neurodiversity thing, I love learning how other people are experiencing the world. Like, that's my favorite thing to learn about now.
Oh, let me ask you this. Okay, I did not have this question in my notes, but I just thought of it. So uh, quite a few years back, somebody was like, "How do you think?" I was like, "What do you mean? Like, what do I think?" No, they were like, "No, how? Like, how does your thinking go in your head?" And I was like, "Wow!" Like, I never thought of that, and I realized that my thinking has actually changed from when I was like almost fully deaf. My thinking was very visual. Like I could see and imagine things in very bright colors and everything. But then my vision started to degrade to the point where I eventually went legally blind. I could see, but it was like extremely blurry and
Mm-hmm.
like the colors were fading. And and that was around the time that I got my cochlear implant. And my thinking became really oral. Like it's just like a constant chatter in my head now. And
Oh, that's
it's hard for
fascinating.
me, yeah, it's hard for me to like see images. Like I can think about them if it's something I've seen before, but I can't quite like create something if it's like
Yeah,
described to me. So how do you
yeah.
think?
Oh my gosh. And so my thinking is evolving and changing too, which is really cool, like how things can change. So I have a lot of like I always used to tell people like in my head it's like the virtual headsets, those VR headsets, it's always been like that. I can close my eyes, I'm in this little virtual VR 3D
Ah,
world, you know. But I always my memory was always really tricky and I didn't have all the memories or like it would be like some short-term memories just wouldn't record a lot of times. It was like, oh, it's so frustrating. But then the
ah,
long-term memories that I had were like they're forever. It's like so interesting how that would work. And so like it used to be like I didn't really have like an internal monologue that felt like my own. And now recently, as I'm like working and doing a lot of trauma healing, like I'm starting to have like kind of my own voice internal monologue in addition to the visual. And I've never
ah.
had that before. And so
That's
that's new.
amazing.
And that's kind of cool. Like that things can kind of change because it used to always be like more like other voices and sound bites from TV and things didn't really feel like it was my voice in my own head. I would just be like listening to things like
Yeah.
oh when I was little like I created a place in my head where it's like I have a CD player and I could go in there and put a CD in and then I could play whole songs and whole albums in my head CD, and so like I could like listen to those when I was going for a run at school at PE, so it's like I'm like, oh, you mean everyone doesn't have like a room in their head with a CD player that plays music. And so I'm like, it really blew my mind to find out like on my page there was like I think it was like a meme or a post you reshared. I reshared it once, and it's like asking like what's it like in your head, and so it's like some people like no pictures, only words, and like
Yeah.
things like that. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting to conceptualize, and just like the spectrum, or like some people like the visualness like varies, like what they see, like with the face blindness, like unless I've seen someone a lot of times and memorized their face, like I don't have like the face details necessarily.
Ah.
I have some faces, but they're like faces that over the years I've like worked to memorize. But like usually when
Wow.
I recognize
Yeah.
people, I actually recognize people by the sound of their voice or like their footsteps or things like that. Like
That's
or like
amazing.
if they have like a feature that really stands out, like they walk a certain kind of way or their hair's very specific to them and it's easy, like I'll grab a feature like that. But if they change that feature, it's over. I'm not going to recognize them. And it's like I didn't even realize I was compensating. But something that's really interesting I found out is about a lot of people with face blindness is my vision's been really bad since I was young. And so I like couldn't see, I didn't get glasses till I was like 12. And so it was like I probably wasn't looking at people's faces because I couldn't really see them.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
also,
Wow.
I wonder, like, I never learned to read people's facial expressions and body language. Like, what impact does that have? I learned to read animal body language because it's like way more obvious and you can see it because their whole body
Yeah.
moves. But like, I didn't learn. So it's like, I have so many questions about like how our brains like configure. And I'm just like, brains are fascinating.
I love brain science. I have a lot of stuff on brain science on my
I
on
like
my
your shirt.
channel because I love
Brains
that
are
stuff.
awesome.
Oh yeah, we're just like it says I wish everybody had one. I don't
Oh,
know if you can see that.
that's cute. Like I tell people when I work in businesses, I'm like, neuro inclusion is inclusion for everyone with a brain, and hopefully that's everyone here.
Well, like it, yeah, that's something that helped me so much to understand autism and OCD and all of these other neurodivergent spectrum that we have, right? Um, so quickly before we move on to that conversation of neurodivergence, because a lot of my my followers are used to my content being about atheism and like debunking,
Oh, that's fun too.
religion and stuff. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was, yeah, so I was curious, like from watching your content, I can tell that you're not religious, but like, so do you consider yourself agnostic or atheist, or like, what is your
So
background in there?
interestingly enough, I'm not religious, but I am actually deeply spiritual, and I think there's a difference.
Okay, yeah,
You
there
know,
is for sure.
and so like, you know, my spiritual belief is kind of just like this. There's an energy to everything in the world, and you know, trees and nature, and I kind of believe we should kind of be in flow and harmony with that. And you know, I do think maybe there are things we might not understand in the world, but
Yeah.
you know, I don't need to go tell everybody to believe what I believe either, you know, because I was raised in the Texas, so I come from the Bible Belt, so I have a lot of opinions
Oh,
about organized religion and forced
for sure.
Christianity. And you know, most of, you know, people probably assume I'm not religious at all or not spiritual, because I do keep it to myself, because I'm like, it's
Okay.
nobody's business, you
No, no,
know.
it's not. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah,
For
my
me
husband. I
it's
would say that what you described is like what my husband believes as well. Very spiritual, like energy type thing. Yeah, so I'm
and
familiar with that
morals.
concept. Yeah,
And you know, I believe that like being you know, the goodness and kindness put into the world has a ripple effect, you know.
yeah.
um and I believe there's a lot of things we don't understand about our world. And that's kind of, that's where I am, and I'm like, show me. I have curiosity
I
instead
love
of
that.
like, you know, just like there's nothing unless I can believe it's true, or I have proof it's true. And I think, you know, a lot of people like that. And I have friends who are like that, and that's cool. But I'm just like, I'm open to possibilities, and, you know, we'll see what
Exactly.
happens.
Well, like if you can show evidence of something, then yeah, obviously you're gonna believe it. Yeah, and if
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
have evidence, then you can't really say like, oh no, 100% no. But
Maybe.
it's like maybe,
Yeah. I'm willing
So
to say
yeah,
maybe, you know,
yeah.
and
Let's keep
yeah.
looking into it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's this.
exactly.
I like that. Okay, look. All right, so let's move on. Um, so let's go back to like childhood. We were speaking about childhood and growing up and different. And I always felt like the odd one out. Okay, like, did you have a similar experience? That I know you weren't diagnosed at the time. Like, did you also feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like, I didn't have a diagnosis, but I stood out like a, you know, sore thumb, so to speak. Like, you, people noticed I was different. And before I went to school, adults thought it was really interesting. And it was like a parlor trick that I was like 1.5 and I could read and I had the vocabulary. And I was like 3, and then I was speaking like a little professor, very stereotypical, you know, stuff. And so they're like, oh, this kid's so sharp. This kid's amazing. And then like I was set up with this like expectation of like being this academic whiz. And then I went into school and it was like, crash and burn, because I was only amazing at reading and vocabulary. It was only one area, not everything. And the
uh,
school was like, oh, well, see, this high reading level and reading score and vocabulary, that means they're lazy because they're not doing good in math, which is like a totally different part of the brain, right? Or like, because I had no impulse control, because combined type ADHD and being autistic and being someone with no regulation skills, because I didn't learn those until I was an adult after my diagnosis. Like no regulation skills until I was in my 30s, other than dissociating, which that didn't come until much later. Like I couldn't conform to the classroom. I stood out. I was always in trouble. And so I was picked on by my peers very viciously, because like they like I was always getting in trouble and I was making noises, and the teacher was like annoyed with me. And so the teacher's like, look, this, you know, this kid's disrupting class, and like use me as an example, a lot of public shaming. And so then when my peers would pick on me, like I'd go to the teacher and the teacher's like, well, start acting normal and they'll stop picking on you. And I'm just like, do you
oh,
mean act normal? Because I had
mm,
no frame of reference for what I was even doing. That was odd. But the message was, I must be the problem, you know? And so, like, I
because
started
you're
to
the
internalize
different
that
one.
really
Yeah.
early, that who I was the problem, who I was needed to be
Uh,
contained or repressed,
that
because I
reminds
needed to.
me. Yeah, that reminds me so much of my kids. They're a teenager now. They're 14. They just turned 14. Um, so when they were diagnosed, they were like 8, and it was the same experience. Like they got into the spelling bee, and they aced it. Like they could spell words that I couldn't even spell as a 30-year-old. And so they put them in the whole program and won like an award and everything. But then math, they
Mm.
got to math, and it was like, no, it was just traumatic for them. Eventually, with COVID, we started homeschooling, and I had to take like a 6-month break with them for from math because every
Oh
time we
wow,
will
yeah.
try it, it was like completely like a complete meltdown, like a severe
The
anxiety. The
trauma.
OC, yeah, the
Yeah.
OCD will like come roaring to the front, and it was like, yeah. So but then I started putting a more positive spin on it and no pressure. Like, listen, if you're
Yeah.
not doing the math, okay, that's fine. Like, I suck at math too. Let's do it together. And so, like now, we do okay with it. We may not be the best, but we do what we can with it. All right? Like
Yeah.
we try to focus on like what they're good at. That's where we go.
That's what
Like
the schools
we
need
try
to
to,
do
yeah.
for the neurodivergent kids, honestly. Like, that
Mm.
is, like, every time I talk to other neurodivergent people, because a lot of them are parents of neurodivergent kids, and even, like, some of my friends, like, we went through the school systems. Now we see our kids struggling through the same thing. And, like, it's clear to so many of us that it's like we need schools that let neurodivergent kids do their specialized skills and ease off on the things that aren't their thing so that they can learn they're good at things. Because I left school thinking I was incapable of learning. And now as an adult, I've learned I'm
Mhm.
really good at learning if I love the thing I'm learning about. I can learn more about a thing I love than anyone else I know. Like, that's why I've been obsessed with autism and neurodivergence and social hierarchies and power structures for the last 9 years. So it's like, I just need to be pushed to do what I'm called to do. And that's what, our kids need to do, because that's, we have neurodivergent kids who have like really bad or no self-esteem because they don't think they're capable, because these systems push them into things that they're not, have no desire for. And then they think, oh, I suck because I have a weakness that other people don't have. And it just destroys these kids. And it's like, if we were doing things we're good at, we would be building our self-esteem instead, and learning we're capable. And
But
it just
yeah,
gets me.
even for neurotypical people, like
Everybody.
they should not expect every single kid
Oh
to be
no.
able to learn, like earn A's on every single subject. That's just so unfair
It
to
is
me.
unfair to
Yeah.
all of the kids, really. And like the way we learn, like, come on, sorry. Like, they want kids to sit still for more hours a day than I can possibly sit still as an adult, even now. It's like we have to do something with our school systems, because it's bad for all of the kids, but the neurodivergent kids are like the canaries in the coal mine, which is, what happened to me in the workplace is like, it was bad for everybody. When I was
Mhm.
diagnosed and I needed help, they're like, everyone wants what you're asking for. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Your system sucks. Let's fix it.
Yeah, it does. So I was just thinking that, like in my for my 14-year-old, like I said, they're also autistic, ADHD, and OCD. And I am not diagnosed, but I had some of my medical professionals recommend that I get tested because my kid and I have very similar um,
Mm-hmm.
aspects that will point to my possibly being either ADHD or autistic. But I never thought that it would be helpful for me at this stage. I'm almost
Yeah.
40, so it's like most of the accommodations are made for children, for students, for people who are in the workforce, and I work from home, so I kind of like
Yeah.
make my own accommodations, which is great because my
Mm-hmm.
my executive function is non-existent. So, but
Relatable.
yeah, so I'm curious. Like you say you were diagnosed at 29. So well, like you shared a little bit about it. Like, but how did that change your perspective of who you are now, who you were before? Like, have you found any useful tools that you learned at this age? Well, at 29,
100%.
over all of these years, that you could share with people that maybe
Yeah.
are diagnosed later in life.
Well, it changed everything. Like, it not only changed the way I saw my past and present self and future self, even, like, it changed the way I saw my past self, because, like, looking at my past selves before, I was so angry and, like, just thought of all the ways they were inferior and weren't enough, and like they needed to be something else. you know, and that's not a good way to think about yourself. And then the present self, like, you know, I started to have compassion for those past selves for the first time in my life. And then when I
Yeah.
had compassion for my past selves, I could see my present self and go, oh, like all of that shit that happened in the past led to where I am now, and this is not my fault. Like, it's a very shitty situation. And then I was kind of mad at the world for a while because I was like, dang, I went all those years without knowing, you know, and like all that pain that could have been avoided. But I've kind of flipped how I think about that now. I think I found out at the right time in my life. But you know, and now it's like before I found out I was diagnosed thinking about future self, I didn't see a future self. I was like in the
Oh,
give up point, like, what's the point? This is hard. It's never going to get better. I mean, it's like I can't do it anymore. And like I was not able to conceptualize a future self. And so I was giving up. And now it's like I'm excited to see who I'm becoming now that I'm trying to become the best version of myself with the knowledge that I'm neurodivergent and the best neurodivergent authentic self. Because before I was trying to become the best version of myself based on what society told me I should be, not what I
mm,
actually wanted to be. And so that was what the information gave me. It was like I redefined my entire life and started like instead of like feeling bad about myself and hating on myself anytime I made a mistake or uh, had a weakness, you know, because we all have weaknesses. And so, but it's like I used to be so down on mine because they were ones other people thought I shouldn't have. And so I started to think I shouldn't have them. And so I got to finally let that shit go and start being like, okay, how do I work with this instead of, you know, working against my mind? And so it's like,
yeah.
okay, what tools, what can I do to support myself? This is the way it is. Okay, we're going to accept it. This is the way it is. Okay, what can we do to make this easier or better? Or, you know, when am I at my best? What is holding me back? And so, like, instead of it's just like, I used to think I was holding me back, I was the problem. Now my instinct isn't to blame myself automatically anymore. So now it's like, you know, for example, like I used to feel really, really guilty and ashamed of rest and self care and just doing anything I needed to recharge myself. That's something I picked up because, you know, I started
Mm,
working when I was 11 and I've been working ever since. And so I got that capitalistic mindset that like rest is something you earn and you do all the work and all the survival shit. And if you have time, you might be able to rest, but you don't deserve that unless you've taken care of everything else. And now, like, uh, especially now that like the consulting work has almost gone away and I've had to like refocus myself. Like it's like, okay, I rest and recharge myself first and then see what I have energy for after I'm depleted. And then sometimes there's like, I have to do a thing. You know, like there's some things you just have to do even if you're depleted because that's life. But
yeah.
you know, I'm really asking myself, do I have to be pushing myself right now? I feel exhausted. I used to ignore that and like, well, it doesn't matter if I feel exhausted. And this isn't just tired. This is exhausted. It's very different from tired and exhausted. You know, this isn't one night sleep's going to make it better. This is chronic fatigue from constant hypervigilance. Like I always am tired, like thinking that was an okay way to be. And now it's like, oh, like rest is a priority. So it's like, you know, I block my time and schedule. So it's like, I know, for example, like if I do something like this where we're talking for an hour, it's great and I can get the energy to do it. But then I'm not gonna have the energy to go write a piece after this. I'm gonna need to go unplug and let my brain wind down. I can do a bunch of calls in a row because that's the kind of energy I get into,
I
but I
feel
can't
that so
do
deeply.
call, writing, call. Like I can't do that. So I'm like, oh, it's okay. It used to be like I'd force myself to do it and I would be so depleted. And now I know like this is probably the biggest thing that's helped me of all the tools I've had is like I think of myself like a video game, I gamify my life, right? I'm a video game character. I have a health bar. And so I think about the things that are slicing off pieces of that health bar and
Yeah.
the things that are putting it back when I used to never think of that before. And I think about keeping it as close to full as I can when I used to keep it as close to the bottom as possible. And then so like it was close to the bottom. And so
But then
then
I'm
one thing
empty.
would come and I'd lose it. And so then I would melt down or I'd flip out on someone or I would destroy a
Mm.
relationship or lose a job or get sick and
Oh
fall
my god.
apart because I was running on next to empty all the time. And so now when I keep that bar full, when something comes, my window of tolerance is higher. And so it's like learning about the window of tolerance. It's a big thing. Well, it's a Google window of tolerance, really
I love
transformative.
that.
Yeah, really big life changer. And then just like learning like about myself, because like I can't tell you what's going to work for you, but for every single person, what drains you, what gives you life force, and what takes it is different. And so like be mindful of like, you know, writing is something that gives me energy. So like I'll write in the morning and then I'll go do my day because it doesn't drain much from me, unless it depends on what I'm
Okay.
writing about. Sometimes I might write about something that's really heavy, like Project 2025. That's probably going to drain me, you know, but not as much as doing a 2 hour call presentation with strangers and people I don't know, you know. So it's like, you know, even though it takes more hours to do the writing, the 2 hours of going live with a bunch of strangers would be more energy lost than 6 hours of writing.
Oh no, I completely get that. For me, like socializing, even though I
Yeah,
enjoy it while I'm there, is so
does.
draining. Like it drains
Mm-hmm.
my brain energy. I like I said, I love the people that I socialize with, and I really enjoy the conversations. But then after, you feel it physically
Mm-hmm.
and mentally, and like yeah. So I completely understand that. I'm gonna look up what the window of tolerance you said was
Yeah,
called. Okay, I'm gonna look that up because that sounds really really helpful and something that I
very
should really
helpful.
implement.
Yeah,
Because I will,
yeah.
yeah, like before the show, I got up super early because we have two shows today.
Woo.
And so I was like, all right, I gotta finish up some of the questions because the one later is gonna be a lot longer.
Oh.
It might end up being like 3 hours or something because we'll see. It's just with somebody that I'm really familiar with that I've talked to before so many times, and we
Oh,
always
nice.
get into like really deep conversations. He's a philosopher and then writing a
Ooh,
book.
fun.
Yeah, so he's like an amazing person. Um, but I live in England, so it was like today was the only day they could do the show, and with the time difference and everything. So anyway, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited about it. But I'm also like I was a little stressed out, so I was like, all right, I could not focus on it. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do this show and then I will finish what I have to finish and we'll do the other show.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the
But
giving yourself the grace for that too. Like, okay, I can't mentally do this right now, so I will be able
yeah.
to, and it's okay that I can't mentally do this
Yeah, I
right
was like,
now.
I'm
And so
not going
shaming
to
yourself
be
to do
pissed.
it, and then
Yeah.
you waste all that energy and you don't get anything done because you're trying to force your brain. Your brain's like, no,
Yeah, and it won't get done in the same way that
it'll
it
be
would if you were
less
more
quality.
focused and
Mm-hmm.
rested. And yeah, I'm gonna have
And it'll take
lunch,
longer.
and
Yeah,
then yeah, I'm gonna take a
yeah,
break and hang out with my family, and then I'll take care of
yeah.
it.
That's perfect. See, and
Yeah,
I used to be, I would have been so ashamed to do something like that. I'm like, no, you have to sit there. That that's like in school, right? You get home from school, you have to sit at this table until that homework's done.
right.
I
Yeah,
know
that's
exactly
what
where
it
that
feels
came from.
like.
It just
Oh,
hit me, and I'm like, I know where that came from. I know exactly where it came from.
yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, I think so speaking of like autistic people, I was thinking about the way things are going on today. And unfortunately, especially here in the United States, I think that autistic people are very, very stereotyped. And I
mm-hmm.
used to be one of those people before my kid was diagnosed who saw autism as like a severe condition and something to be fixed. And let me clarify that I called it a condition because that's how I saw it at the time. But learning more about the way it works completely changed my perspective. And I have to say
Oh
that
yeah.
your content was so helpful in
Mm-hmm.
deconstructing that part of my thinking of how I saw autism and how I saw, like whether women can be autistic. And then, people are like, oh, girls can't be autistic. It's just boys and stuff. It's like, no, everybody can be autistic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I was like, at first I was like, well, no, like my kid doesn't look autistic. Like, how could they be autistic, right? But it's like it's such a harmful. I see now that it's such a harmful stereotype,
Mm-hmm.
to consider even to call it a condition because it's not something to be healed or like to have a treatment for or to get it fixed. But this view is so prevalent and it's been reinforced recently by RFK Jr.'s claim that autistic people look or act a certain way, right? Like his speech was horrifying. But what
Yeah.
can we do? Like, what can we do? Like, what are some misconceptions that you wish people will unlearn and things that you wish they could learn so that we can change this view that people have?
There's a few things. I wish people could understand how much of a like full body experience being autistic can be, because it's, yes, it's the communication piece for a lot of us, but then also uh the motor control piece. A lot of people don't understand sensory motor control differences, and that's the other channel that's really big for a lot of us. So having really intense or lack of sensory experiences, like hyposensitivity where you like don't feel cold, or hypersensitivity where you get cold really easy, or similar things with sound and taste and all the senses. But like if you have that in your motor control, for example, like you can be where you can't button your shirt, or you can't pull up your pants because you can't work your hands, or like if that's in your mouth, think about how freaking complicated it is to speak with your tongue and your mouth and all the things you have to line up to speak. So like if you don't have the fine motor control, that can make speech very difficult. But that's like a separate channel from intellectual abilities and like your thinking. And so like some people think like if you aren't able to physically move your tongue, that doesn't mean that means there's not stuff going on up here. And so that's a really big assumption we need to set down. That non-speaking means there's no understanding of the world around you. The other thing is like thinking about motor control. Yes, it can make it to where we have clumsiness and struggle with motor control. A lot of us are. I can be very clumsy. And I can also roller skate because muscle
I
memory, which
almost
is so
knocked
weird.
myself out the other day with a door.
Ah!
So,
But here's the other thing, it can also go the other way. We tend to be in extremes, right? So we can actually have hyper good motor control. So a good example of that, Clay Marzo, surfer, like he can sense things in the water like in a way we can't. And like my partner who's autistic and dyslexic like has very good body awareness. Like he did this yoga thing I was trying to do for years and years and years, never was able to do. And he was watching me do it, and he like was like, okay, you just do it like this, and did it on his first try. And I'm just like, okay, because like he has a body awareness that I don't have. And maybe that's because he's dyslexic as well. I don't know, and I'm hyperlexic and not dyslexic. I don't know, but it's like just really interesting that we are on this really big spectrum. And the other thing about autism that people don't understand, and I think causes a lot of confusion in why people think autism is always someone who is really struggling greatly, is because being autistic, a lot of us have plus on top of being autistic. Like I'm autistic plus ADHD. I'm autistic plus I also have face blindness. I've got some other pluses. I've got if I expose myself to too much fluorescent lighting, I'll have seizures and migraines and all these pluses. If I don't work very hard, very carefully, I have insomnia and sleep disturbances and struggle to sleep. If I have too much stress because my nervous system gets easily dysregulated, I stop being able to eat food, and my digestive system and I start getting projectile vomiting. Like that's not fun, right? So all these are like really serious problems that aren't always there if I'm taking care of myself, but those are pluses I have that make my life a lot harder if they're not under control, or if I'm just like depleted, they flare up, or if I'm burnt out, they flare up. And so those things suck, but those aren't necessarily core to autism. Those are pluses that I have, but not all autistic people have those things. Right. And so you can be autistic and not have those things. So similarly, you can be autistic and not have seizures. You can be autistic and have seizures. You can be autistic and have intellectual disability. Right. And so you can be autistic and also be very intellectually gifted. Like we tend to be in polar extremes, but we can also be all around that spectrum. And so an autistic person that has complex motor control difficulties also has a bunch of different intellectual disabilities on top of being autistic is going to have a very different experience from an autistic person who has a different plus profile. And so we had an assumption for a long time that autistic people that have all of the pluses like were the definition of autism, and we also kind of defined autism based on autistic people who are struggling and in distress. So like I didn't get diagnosed until I fell apart and had a mental health crisis, burnt out, and my coping mechanisms failed because I didn't have the energy to mask anymore. And so it was like my autism was on full display, and so I got a diagnosis finally when I was almost 30. And so it's like it's this picture of meltdowns and struggling and not being regulated and not having like your sensory needs met. And so like I didn't have my needs met. Autism was very obvious. I got a diagnosis. And so that's because we've got this picture of autistic struggling that we don't even really ask like what's an autistic person who's got all of their needs met look like, and so that's like a really big problem. So like if you like a lot of these parents will come into my Facebook comments and say something really ignorant like you're not autistic, and then they'll say, you don't do, and then they'll fill in the blank with something I did as a child. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't do that anymore, but I did that when I was 5 and 7. And it's like, they've got kids about the age I was when I did those things, and they're like, my kid does this and they're autistic. I'm just like, I did those things when I was that age. And, it's like they just assume there's not growth and there's not change. And that's why a lot of us struggle to get diagnosed, because like they don't understand there's masking and there's coping skills. And like when there's an expectation that you must somehow survive and conform in the world and nobody's supporting you, you have to find little tips and tricks to get by. Like I can't remember if I'm on shampoo or conditioner in my hair, and so I'll move the bottles around so I know what step I'm on. So it's a visual cue. Like I've got little tricks, whereas some people are like, oh, they can't even shower. They don't know if they shampooed or washed their hair. They might say they'll never be able to take care of themselves because they can't even
I
wash their hair.
I started using the 2-in-1.
Nice. Yeah.
So
See, we've got workarounds. And they're like, they'll never live on their own. They can't even remember if they've shampooed their hair or not. Like, that's the thing you'll hear. And I'm like, I can't remember if I shampooed my hair a lot, but I live on my own. I just have to, the shampoo's here, and then I move it over there. I'm like, okay, now I'm on conditioner. And then it goes over there. Oh, I'm done.
yeah, like a
You know,
routine, sort of, not like a
I,
long routine, but like a order, I guess you could
and
say.
it's
Yeah.
like I leave myself little breadcrumbs all over because I know,
Yeah.
like, I might not remember something unless there's like a reminder or some kind of visual. It's like it's left where I can see it, and like it's a visual cue. And so it's like I do this now. I'm not ashamed about it anymore. When I used to be ashamed, I'd like forget shit, and I wouldn't leave myself cues and reminders and breadcrumbs. And because I didn't, I was like, I shouldn't have to do this. Nobody else does this, and I was a shame thing. And now my life is so much more functional and way less chaotic that I just shamelessly leave myself breadcrumbs and live with my brain instead of against it.
Yeah, so like years ago, I used to make lists for everything, all right? And
Yeah.
I was having some therapy, and my doctor was like, "Well, that's not healthy. Like you shouldn't," because I felt bad if I didn't finish my lists and stuff like that. It was stressful.
Oh yeah.
But so he encouraged me to stop using the lists, and I stopped, and like it was just not helpful at all because I have like I think it's called object permanence issues,
Mhm.
to where
Yeah.
if it's not there, I don't often remember that I have to do it. So
Mhm.
like I have so many
And then
things
you're
that I
stressed
don't get done.
because you're
Yeah.
like, what am I not doing?
So now I was like, you know what? I need the list. If I don't have the list, I'm not gonna get anything done, or it will be late, and then too late
Yeah.
for like a deadline or whatever. So now I just went back to the list. It's not I don't do it anymore in the way where it was before, where it's like obsessive almost. And if I don't finish something and I still have time to do it another time, I will leave it there on the list. But the list is there, and it will remind me to do it at some point. So
You know
that's
what helps
helpful.
me with those lists too is like, and I did I relate. And so like I changed how I do my lists and things. So it's like I'll have a list that's like only the things that absolutely must be done today. And then if I've
Okay,
got
yeah,
time, I might do one of these. And so I have
yeah,
this has to be done, and if I have time. And so since it says if I have time slash energy, if I have time or energy, because that's important. It used to just be time, but it's like, do I really like feel like I have the energy to start this? And then I'll do it. And then I don't feel guilty if I don't do everything. And so I've got this list of like things that aren't high priority but kind of need to be done. And so they always live in this if I have time, do these things. And then the other boxes, this must be done by this deadline.
yeah. Okay, yeah. I started using this app called Trello, and it
Oh,
gives you the
nice.
option to do like different lists.
Yeah.
And so I set the priority. This is what I have to do today. This is what I can do
Yeah.
this week. And this is what I have to do
Uh-huh.
this month. So
Perfect. Yeah,
yeah, so it
exactly.
helps. But
Mm-hmm.
so for me, what helped me understand what autism how autism works was finding like I started learning. I got really interested in brain science, like neurology,
Yeah.
psychology, and all of that a few years ago when when my kid was diagnosed, and I learned about the way the brain processes all kinds of input, not just not just sensory stuff, but like
Mm-hmm.
what, well, yeah, I mean, input, I guess you could call it sensory input, anything that's like hearing or taste
Mm-hmm.
or touch and all of that. And so without this, with that's all it is with autism, a different way of processing all of these input that the world puts in front of us. And for some people it's a lot harder to process that input, or maybe not harder but different. It's just a
Yeah.
different way of how you perceive, like,
I'll say
touch.
the
Like some
output can
people
be
don't like
different
being
too, though.
touched. Yeah.
The output and the input, not
Yeah.
just the input.
Okay, that's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah. Um, so somebody mentioned in the live chat. Let me see. What was that question?
Yay.
I saw a good question on there earlier. Uh, okay. Vic said, "I'll never understand this stigmatization of harmless stimming." Let's talk about stimming,
Oh,
because
yeah.
that's a coping mechanism that a lot of autistic people use. What are some of your favorite non-harmful stims
Well,
that you
like
do?
right now, I'm sitting crisscross applesauce, so they say, and my little toes are
Okay.
just like wiggling. And you have no idea. Like my feet are just like butterfly, bup, 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 the entire time.
Oh, I
Like
love that.
sometimes, like I have, like, sometimes I'll be on a call and I didn't do it this time because they weren't in front of me. And I'll just be sitting here and I have my little bag of my favorite rocks. And so I'll
Oh,
have like one of
okay.
my favorite rocks. And so I'll like have one of my favorite rocks in my hand and I'll just like, like I'll be like holding one of my
That's
rocks.
fine.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, how many rocks do you have? I have 6 rocks.
They're so pretty. This one's a heart shape.
Oh.
Uh, okay, I don't know if you can
Yeah,
see
so
it.
now I'm gonna show you. Want to see my rocks? Because nobody ever wants to see your rocks anymore. Once you're an adult, you don't get to show off your rocks. These are my rocks.
Wow, they're so pretty. I like
So
the
like,
colors.
they're stimmy and like, see, like I have some goldstone, and so I don't know if you can even tell,
Uh,
but they're like really glittery and stimmy. So those are like very like visual stim. It's like also pretty. When I was a kid, I had this like wand that had the glitter in it, and they would call it the magic dream
uh,
wand, and it was a big one, and I would lay in bed and like watch it until I fell asleep. Didn't even know I was stimming, right? I used to have those pinwheels when I was a kid. But as an adult, it's a lot of like my body stuff. Like I move, like I'll play with like a necklace I have on, or like I'll fiddle with my jewelry. But I do a lot, I kind of rock and like I dance about. And like being that I work from home now, like on my own, like I get up and I'll pace a lot. Or like if I'm on a call and it's not a video call, like I'll just be like pacing around and walking around. And like sometimes I'll just jump up. But like now, this is the other thing. Like I had a lot more need to stim when I was repressing things because I was like building up a lot of my energy and I didn't have a good sensory diet. But I was like repressing and holding in and not stimming even though I needed to. And so I was keeping my body really tense all the time. And so I had like tight jaw problems, which would give me headaches. I had like all this muscle tension and like fascia buildup from like holding myself tense from trying not to stim. And now like I'm like have time every day where I like move at different times of day where like I'll like go dance or I'll like do some yoga or I'll go outside with the dogs and like play around and move. And so like now that I mindfully already am doing that in my day, like I stim, but I have less need to stim because like I'm already getting that energy out, and so I'm better regulated because like with the stimming, like it's a response to like energy in the body. And so when you have energy in your body, whether that comes from like your emotions or other things, like you get
yeah.
anxious, a surge of energy hits you and then it has to go somewhere. You get angry, a surge of energy hits you and it has to go somewhere. So I think you get scared and your hands might go and then or you get angry and your fists might clench, or you might stomp or jump, or you get happy and you might just like and jump up and down. And like a lot of people will do that when they have extreme emotions. But like as an autistic person, like a lot of my emotional responses, like I feel very very intensely, and like a lot of like the fact that I didn't wasn't properly regulating myself meant I already had more energy in my body than I needed, and so I was kind of already like maxed out in that way, and so like adding more was just like
Yeah.
too much. And so like now that I'm getting it out, like I have less jumps and energy. So that's kind of interesting too. But like if I get anxious, I'll start stimming more. If like there's energy added into the system, I'll start stimming more. But it used to be like when I always had extra energy in me, I like always felt like I just needed to be moving. And it was like this twisting, like something was twisting me tight and winding me
Uh,
tight and it needed to burst out. And so like I would like walk out of it. Like when I worked in an office, I would like walk out of the office and go like across the hallway and walk into the bathroom. If nobody's in there, the minute I walk in there, just like burst out and like shake everything out of me. Like it would just feel like releasing a spring that was just wound so tight. Because it was like breathing, you know, like in, out, energy,
Yeah.
air in, air out. It's like stimming, energy in, energy out. It's like when energy is created, it has to go somewhere. We learned this in science in school, and science wasn't my best subject, but I do remember that. So it's like the energy in the body has to go somewhere,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
And
it
if I
does.
wasn't getting it out, I was channeling it all in on myself and bottling it up like a volcano. And, you know, I
Yeah.
had more meltdowns too, and was just
Yeah,
more
and
reactive,
yeah,
you
if you have
know?
so much like negative energy stored within yourself, like
Yeah.
your experience of the world is not gonna be also very positive. Yeah.
Just poorly regulated, you know, just poorly regulated, and just not, you know, like similar to not having that energy health bar filled up. It was like my sensory need bar was not filled up.
Yeah, and I think that might be where harmful stimming comes from, where the person just doesn't have the coping skills or the sensory output, like
And it
to
can,
let
or
the energy out. Yeah.
like for example, I could think of like when I had a toothache, like it was really, really painful. And all I wanted to do was just punch my leg so much because I wanted to distract from that one pain. Because it was like I
Hmm.
was in pain and I had this energy in me that I couldn't get rid of, you know? And so it also can come from extreme pain and extreme distress and wanting to stop pain in one area and then not being able to stop the pain. So it's like I needed a dentist to stop the pain, you know? And so it's like, you know, sometimes when it's like harmful stimming, you think like a person is in really extreme distress a lot of times, or they don't have a better coping mechanism. So I think of something that's less harmful, but also harmful, like biting these cuticle tips and biting our nails. And like, oh, I used to chew the
Yeah.
inside of my mouth when I didn't, when I was repressing my stims, right, in the office. Chewing my tongue and my mouth to death was socially acceptable.
Oh, yeah.
That was
I
not good,
the
and that
size
was
of
a
my mouth
harmful
are
stim.
yeah.
Yeah. But I did that because I couldn't stim in a less harmful way. So I adopted harmful stimming as coping mechanisms.
Yeah, for sure. Um yeah, and I think that's some of the things that the society could do to help neurodivergent people, to give them that space to be able to stem freely and not don't be judging, don't make them feel like they're doing something weird or odd or like out of place, or like if you need some time and you're at work and you need that, okay, just let the person do whatever they need to do to come back and do the work that they have to do, right? So speaking of that, like I know you said you wrote some books for workplaces, right? Like your
Yeah.
work revolves around that. What is it exactly does your book uh cover?
Well, there's two books I've worked on. There's one that's a workplace book called Workplace Neurodiversity Rising, and that's the first book I wrote, and that one's mine, like just me. And it is basically when I was working doing consulting in workplaces, I realized that my way of approaching neuroinclusion and neurodiversity was very different than other consultants. Other consultants were trying to embed themselves in these people's companies so that they could, like, in my opinion, rack up a bunch of hours and maximize their dollars. It's capitalism. Um, but my ethos is get in, create emotional safety so that your employees and team members can do all of the work. And if they feel safe sharing their needs, they'll speak up and say, this isn't working for me. This could be more effective. This could be done better. And you don't need an outside consultant for that unless you don't have neurodivergent people because your culture is so toxic you aren't able to foster them. And that's a different problem. But most of the time, you can start fixing things and get neurodivergent people to start fixing the systems they're in if you give them that safety. And so that was my ethos about it. And it was like all about creating that emotional safety and then giving like really simple tools, most of which cost absolutely nothing to do to start making things better now. Because like every time I would hear all these excuses of why it couldn't be done, and I'm like, no, it's actually a lot of things you need to make are simple, cost nothing, and they'll make your workplace better for everyone, and it'll be more profitable because people are going to be more effective, better,
Well,
happier
yeah.
employees because that's just the way it is. We don't do as well when we're not our best selves. And so like that was the workplace book, because I realized I'm one person. I can't be in every company. I don't want to be in every company. I don't even want to embed myself in the companies I'm working with. I want to go help them get some theories and get them going on their own, and like teach them to fish so they can fish themselves. And so that was that book. And that was just because I knew there's a problem and I could give people the answers so they can work on it by themselves and just start doing something. Just pick something in the book and do it. You know, and it's like, no more excuses, just pick something and do it. You're going to at least start making changes. So that was that goal of Workplace Neurodiversity Rising. And then the second book was a collaboration that it's not my book, but I was honored to get to work on it. And it's a project called Autism, Identity, and Me. And that book was originally released in the UK by Rebecca Doofus. And Rebecca, to create a US version, came to me. And we got to help revamp and create a very inclusive US version, because it was a little bit gender binary in the original version. And so years later, we updated it, but a gender inclusive version. But it's all about identity. And so we brought in Laura and Melissa to come do a section on race, because race is a big part of identity, and in America, especially. And so like we really just like revamped it and put in American resources. And basically it's a book for autistic young people around age 10, but give or take, because reading levels are all different. Although I've had adults buy it and use it for themselves and say it works. It's written for young people. And it's all about learning about your autistic identity and what that means for you as an autistic person, like what your sensory needs are, what your cognitive profile kind of looks like, what tools you need to be your best self, how you can explain and come out about being autistic to people when it might not be safe to share this information. And so it's a book for the young person to work through, write in it, like do activities, learn about themselves. And it comes with a parent or a helper guide for an adult, teacher, psychologist, therapist, parents to work with them in their own book side by side to help guide them through this process. And so that was put up by Routledge Education. And so that's a really exciting project. Because I want to give something to the future generations to have what I didn't have growing up, not knowing myself at all. So that was an honor to be able to work on that. And we might be working on another project, and I'm not going to say more yet.
Oh, okay, I'm excited for that then. Okay.
Me and Rebecca have another idea, and stay tuned.
All right, I'll keep an eye out for it. I want push for it. Details. But yeah, so you were just talking about gender diversity as well, and I've noticed, and don't quote me on any. I'm not quoting any kind of data. It's just an observation. But I have seen many neurodivergent people who are also gender diverse, and in fact, my teenager who I've been referring to as they, because they're gender fluid, and they have been for pretty much since they were diagnosed with being autistic. It was around the same time that they started exploring that that aspect of themselves. And myself, I was a tomboy growing up. I've always hated like being feminine, but for example, my mom will always be like, no, but your hair looks so much nicer long, and I keep it up and I keep it on the sides. I will have it all shaved. The famous like, that's what I love yours. Yeah,
it's too hot in Texas to have hair.
I know, right? So, but I think a lot of the gender norms that I followed for years were from feeling pressured that I kind of had to fit into that box of being a woman. And when I finally realized that, being my authentic self was the same as being my best self, because if I present myself as a fake person to others, then I'm not being my best self to them or for them or for myself. So, I felt so much better after I started embracing who I really was. But anyway, the point is like so many neurodivergent people are also gender diverse. Do you think that there's a connection there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's one of the first things I noticed when I first started entering autistic spaces all of those years ago. It's like the first thing I noticed, because like I'm a queer person in Texas, so you feel like you're kind of an island around here sometimes, because like even growing up in high school, most of my queer friends weren't even open until after high school, which is really wild. I'm like, you could have totally came out to me, man, but it is what it is. Like you don't feel safe. And so like I noticed right away, I'm like, it seems like straight cis people are the minority in every autistic space I enter. Like That's just
Yeah.
like been a thing. And then like finally years later they had that study that came out, and was it Nature, or one of them did that study on gender diversity and autism, and it was like I think they were like 6 times as likely to be gender diverse. I don't know the exact, I'm bad with numbers, I'm not the math autistic, but there was like a percentage. It was significant that autistic people were more likely to be gender nonconforming, trans, gender diverse. And I was like, hey, look, science finally proved what the rest of us autistic people have been saying for years. It took you long enough. But it's interesting because I've looked into it too, and it's not just autistic people. Like neurodivergent people seem to have more likelihood to be queer in multiple ways, and I think that's really interesting. And then I wonder, like, are we really more likely to be queer, or is it that we're more likely to be out of the closet and open about it? Because, like, thinking about in my own case, like, I've been openly polyamorous since I was like 11 or 12 years old, which is really questionable to people. I was open about being attracted to people regardless of gender from around the same age. It didn't occur to me to hide it because, like, people never thought I was normal anyway, like normal. I never fit into the mask of normalcy. I was always other, weird, strange. And like queer usually used to be the word for weird, right? Queer, weird. People already saw me as queer. People already thought I was
Mm.
weird. So I didn't
Yeah.
have the mask of normalcy to hide behind. So, like, why was I going to hide my gender or my attraction experiences? Because, like, it would make me other. I was already other. So, like, is it a chicken and egg problem? Like, am I just more open about my queerness because it doesn't occur to me to conform it into the social structure? Because I'm like, like, what's the answer here? And
Yeah,
I don't
like,
have the answer, but it's interesting to think about.
yeah, because I think a lot of autistic people are more straight up. Like well, like there are some that spend a lot of time masking, but then at the same time they're very straight uh,
Hmm.
with just saying what they mean, right? Like a
Yeah.
lot of neurotypical people walk around the topic, or like they don't tell you straight up, or they give you hints, but autistic people just tell you how it is. And yeah, so
Hmm.
maybe it is a way, maybe it is more so that they are just expressing who they are because they don't think that it's wrong, and it isn't wrong. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
so I like that. Yeah, I always call myself bisexual just because I think I didn't know that there was any other um,
Yeah.
thing other than either straight, gay, or bisexual. But as I've gotten involved in more with like the atheist community and queer communities, and people who are more evolved, I would say, I learned the term pansexual, which, like, you're attracted to anybody regardless of their gender. And I'm
Yeah.
happily married. I'm happily married. Okay, but yeah, but now I'm like, okay, I am not bisexual. I'm pansexual. So yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
and
not
see, that's the thing. The labels can change and evolve, and we don't have to be locked into them either. Because that's similar. Like, I like when I was young, I thought I was a lesbian, but every now and then I liked a guy. That's what I thought, and I was like, oh, bisexual, because like I didn't know the term. So I was like, I thought lesbian, or I
yeah,
thought only straight or lesbian. Oh, I'm a lesbian, but I must sometimes like guys because I didn't know non-binary was a thing, back then either. And
yeah,
so
me
I was like,
neither.
and then I heard bisexual. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's it. And then I heard, oh, pansexual. Oh, that's definitely it. And then like growing up, like I always knew, like I was like, I don't quite identify with the gender, stuff. But I didn't really have a word for it. And so it's like until I found like gender fluid and non-binary, I was like, that's it. That's a thing. That's a thing. But before that I was like, oh, woman. Okay, yeah, sure, I guess so. That's what my like that's assignment, yeah. I don't really feel it, but okay. And I was like, I'm kind of trans adjacent, but I don't know how. And that was me until I found out
Yeah.
non-binary, gender fluid. Oh, that's it. So it's like I just needed that language. But like I said, Texas, isolated, don't have a community, didn't know the terms. And so, when you learn more, you like become more aware. And so like the giving the language is like very similar to like learning I was autistic. I had the language now, and I could like really see myself now that I had the language for experiences I had that had been erased.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we've been at it for 1 hour. So I'm gonna start winding down this show. And
Perfect.
we were talking about stims earlier, and I was trying to think what are some things that I do repetitively that maybe consider a stim. because I didn't realize that there was visual themes when we were talking
Oh
about the
yeah.
rocks, and I was like, oh, I do that. Like I love to watch like the little shiny on the things and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, wait, I have had the same playlist for like I don't know 10 to 15 years, and I can listen to that playlist and I never get tired of it. And so
Yeah.
I feel like okay, maybe that's a step.
Auditory,
So
yeah, music, yeah.
yeah,
And see, a
so
playlist you control versus play with someone else control, very different feeling too.
yeah. So what? Tell me
Soothing
what
or
are some of
not?
your favorite music? Oh yeah, soothing. No,
Oh my gosh.
exactly.
It really depends on the mood and the day. I like music in general. Like music is my thing. I like pretty much most kinds of music. Although lately, since I've been like working on myself as a person, uh music I used to like I don't like as much, and so I'm having a harder time with music because I like I have more trouble with the messaging in a lot of our
Mm.
music now that didn't used to bother
Oh
me,
yeah.
and so that's the struggle. It's like I'll be listening to a song and I'm like, oh, I love this, and I'm listening to it and then I get what it actually means and about, and I'm like, I don't like it anymore because the message is bad. So
Yeah,
that's
I
been
get
my
that.
struggle because like by nature I want to like all music, like pretty much all of it, you know. And yeah, the morals are getting me.
I know, yeah. Sometimes you hear something or there's like a word in there that they're using that is very offensive, and it like ruins the whole
And
song.
it's like,
And
oh, I
then
love
I'm
this
like,
my whole childhood. And then
no.
you re-listen to it as an adult and go,
Ooh,
ah,
I didn't realize it meant that.
yeah, like because in your young mind, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah, but
Yeah,
music is my
exactly.
safe space. That's why lyric, you know, because also because everything's a song with me. Like if you spend time with me offline, like I something will happen and I'll sing about it. And I don't sing good either. It's not on key. It's probably really obnoxious. Poor David has perfect pitch. I can't.
That's funny. So I'm gonna be in. I won't say what area you're in, but we're both in Texas, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
be like nearby you in August. So maybe we can like meet up or something, like
We
meet in
should meet
person,
up.
face to face. That would be fun. Yeah,
Yeah, we should do that. I want to start meeting up in Austin again, but like I gotta figure out how to, or, like in, sorry, I'm not in Austin, but that's like the hub for the
like the
record.
hub. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
like
that's like the
the
closest
middle.
place. But so like I think like we had meetups in Austin once upon a time, like years ago.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so like I got a little nervous because you see the trolls.
Oh
And so I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm scared to meet up and I don't want someone that has bad intentions to show up and hurt my community members. But I'm starting to think I want to have meetups again,
yeah.
you
That would be
know?
so fun. Yeah, cause I'm going. It's also like one of those things where people come from all over. There's like this event that happens in Austin, and there's like a lot of content creators that come from one from Tennessee that I know that I've met a lot of times before. They're like really cool people.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be so much fun.
If you're
So
going to
I'm
be in
excited for that.
Texas, Austin's a good place to go. Can't afford to live there, but you know, if you're going to go visit, that's the
Oh
little blue
yeah,
dot.
we looked into moving there, and I was like, oh, never mind.
Even the suburbs around Austin. I can get to Austin in 2 hours if there's traffic.
Oh yeah, the traffic's horrible.
Yeah.
It, it might be getting worse than in Houston, which is like a very big city.
Yeah,
So
Houston's pretty bad too. Yeah. At least we don't have the humidity of Houston. Like that's one thing. The coast is so humid.
oh, okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess it's like a sauna when we drive into Houston or like Galveston. It's horrible. I hate.
Yeah. Yeah. I go to the beach. I only go to the beach in winter.
Oh really?
It's
That's a good idea.
unpeoply and colder.
That's good thinking. That's good thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Winter beach trips. This was
Right, right.
fun.
Okay. So let's close it up. Like, what advice would you give somebody that just received a late diagnosis, or like who's questioning their gender or neurodivergence or who they are? Any words of wisdom?
Approach yourself with curiosity and compassion. Even like the things you do that you don't really understand and might be frustrating. to you. Like, be curious and be compassionate with yourself, because like for most of my life I was just so frustrated and angry and hard on myself, and I was beating myself down and I was working against myself. And so like I you know, it's that curiosity, that compassion. I'm collaborating with myself now instead of beating myself down. It's just a much better way to be, because you can't beat yourself down into neuronormativity if you don't have the same brain everyone else has, and nobody has the same brain. Like, I don't even know if neurotypical really exists, because typical is a relative construct dependent on time and space. And so, can a brain really be typical? I mean, it can maybe be average, but even then, like, you know, like I've got a lot
Yeah,
of
like
questions about that, because like
I guess
what's
like
typical
baseline.
depends on what country you're in, the customs of the culture. Eye contact isn't appropriate everywhere. What's typical depends on time and space. Men in America used to wear heels and dresses, makeup, and wigs. You know, like, so all of that typical is relative. And,
It
you know,
evolves so
why are you
much.
trying to reach for something that might not even exist? That's my
Yeah,
thought. That's my little evil seed I'm planting. Does typical even exist? Is it even real? Is any of this real?
I love that. That was a very good message and good advice for people. Hopefully, that are listening. So let me just say that I hope that I really enjoyed today's show. First of all, remember everybody, Neurodivergent Rebel. You can search it on YouTube, on Facebook. I think you're on Instagram as well,
I am on
or
Instagram. Yeah, mostly Facebook, Instagram, but I'm trying to shuffle over to Blue Sky and Substack just in case Meta goes the way of
hmm,
the sketchiness, because I don't trust it. Like, the Facebook page is booming right now, but
yeah.
I've been like slapped and had so many strikes against me. I like, it could go at any minute. You know, you never know when someone's gonna
Uh,
mass report you, unfortunately. So just in case, like, find me on those other places. Who knows what Meta's going to do in the coming years? I don't trust it. It's fishy.
That's so true. Like they recently blocked, they closed down an account of somebody that I know, Seth Andrews, and he's an author. He's got several books. He's a speaker, and it's like they
It
just
happens to a lot
he's
of
like
left
the
pages.
I know he's like the sweetest person. He's super kind, but he did post a few of like anti-Trump stuff, but it wasn't even that bad. And I was
Yeah,
like,
I don't know
oh
how
my
I'm getting away with it right
gosh.
now. So it's like, my page, I'm waiting for it to get shut down because I've just like pulled out all the stops. But like, I think years ago, Parenting Decolonized lost their page. I don't know if they ever got it back. And then
Uh,
On Key Cosplay lost their page and they had to make a new page. And so it's always like, it almost seems like it's maybe, but you know what? That's not fair. It's all, I don't
oh,
follow a lot of right pages. Like, it's always left pages, but I wouldn't know if it was happening to right pages.
I
So
think
that's not a
no, but
fair
I think it
assessment.
is. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I know a lot of like left-leaning kinds of pages that really it's just human rights. And it's not left or right. It's people that care about
Mhm.
human rights is what it is, and it's sad to
Unreasonable.
see. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Okay. Yeah. Oh, Fern. It's their pronouns are they them, and also Fern's pronouns are they them. So they will
Hello, Fern.
they will correct themselves. I know that. They're like one of my very first fans. So
Welcome.
very
Yeah. Blue
love it.
Sky. I think it's like, if you search Neurodivergent Rebel, it'll come up. I think it's like neurodivergentrebel.substack.bluesky. Hang on. I can actually check. Because they asked me to make it longer. Neurodivergentrebel.substack.com is the @ on Blue Sky.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
I don't know if that's backwards, but yeah.
Okay. I did post the link to your website earlier, like your main website. So I'm sure
Oh,
you have all
perfect.
the links on there. So yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think so.
actually, you know what? I'm gonna put it on the screen real quick. There we
There it
go.
is.
You're the
Okay.
Rebel.com.
It's me. The thing.
So perfect. I was prepared. I forgot, but I was prepared.
Noise.
I almost forgot. Oh, yeah. Anyways, so I hope that if today's show taught you guys anything, it is that the problem was never you. All right, the struggle is not your brain, it's not your identity, not your way of being, but rather the problem is the system that was never designed to include you in the first place. So today's conversation reminded us that both neurodivergent and gender diverse people don't need to be fixed. They don't need to be changed. They just need to be seen, heard, supported, and allowed to live without apology. That's my messaging for today. Your brain isn't broken. Your identity isn't up for debate. You are who you are. You are perfect just the way you are. Well, I mean, perfect is just like abstract word. Like you are meant to be the way you are, and you can change that. You, like, however that evolves, don't feel like you have to explain yourself for it. That's, I guess that's
Give
what I was trying
yourself
to
the
say.
love and kindness. Give yourself the
Yeah,
love and
yeah,
kindness. You deserve it just because you are.
right. Yeah, like the more room we make for differences in everybody, the more human we all become. Like, stop
Mm-hmm.
dehumanizing people just because they're different. Like, rehumanize every human being for being just human. So thank
Yeah.
you all for being here. Stay curious, stay loud, stay unapologetically you. And we will see you next time.
Bye.